You know, it's funny. Alright, thank you for checking out this review. Special thanks to... Alright, yeah, you're right. I can't just do that. Let me just stay right there for a second. Let me go get my fence to sit on. Also, look at my Twitter. So I reviewed the worst from Gumball, which is considered by many to be one of the worst episodes of Gumball. In those comments, I received many suggestions as to what the actual worst episode of Gumball would be, each valid and on the table to be discussed. So consider my next few Gumball reviews to be my pursuit into looking at some very hated episodes. So what is the hero? Why do people despise the hero? Well, like the worst, it gets straight into the reason within the first few scenes. There's some opening banter about Masami's new look, which leads to everyone discussing the good aspects of their father. I do appreciate how everyone's story is believable, and how it doesn't feel contrived. Masami is the spoiled daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Yoshida, the former being the owner of the Rainbow Factory, which explains why she's rich. Banana Joe, Terry, and Hector's 2 cents also seem realistic. However, then we get into Gumball and Darwin.
How about putting on weight? He's awesome at that. He must be good at something. I guess he's only good at being embarrassing.
So let's talk about meaning. I think one of the worst things you could do to someone is question their worth as a human being, or make them question their own worth. I love getting angry and ranting about this thing or that thing, but when it comes to saying things such as X is worthless or we'd be better off without Y, I try to be very cautious about what I apply that label to, because oftentimes that could be what turns something into somewhat of a toxic mess. I say all of that to say that I don't think that Richard is worthless. However, Gumball and Darwin provide a great point about their father. He's incapable of being any help in most situations. Richard is great at being embarrassing because in many instances, he has had no shame and will go into situations on his worst foot rather than his best. The thing is, this episode goes through a story that is trying to show you that this is the wrong way of viewing Richard, and that's why the episode causes friction with some people. The episode wants you to think of Richard in the same way that you think of Nicole, and the way that Richard is spoken upon throughout the episode will lead you to believe that Gumball and Darwin are unappreciative of their parents. They are appreciative of their parents, however, they aren't delusional about their parents, and this is why I have my fence here, but I'll explain my fence sitting in a moment. We get a montage of Richard dancing, which is the highlight of the first half of the episode. Oh wait, we haven't talked about... Yeah, I'm gonna have to split this episode into 2 parts, and it'll make sense soon. Just stick with me here. However, let's get to the spice.
What is wrong with you? You know very well what's wrong. What's going on? Why is dinner wrong? You know very well why dinner is wrong.
This is very annoying to see, not only because of the fact that it's actually crystal clear that Anais and Nicole know for sure that Gumball and Darwin don't know what they did wrong because Anais says that.
Look, Dad overheard what you said in the playground.
If he overheard what Gumball and Darwin said, this implies that Richard heard this without letting Gumball and Darwin knew that he heard it. It's totally not like Anais and Nicole are generally known for being angry at times and could very well be angry at Gumball and also Darwin for something else that they could have done that day. However, the issue I have here is that Gumball and Darwin did not describe their dad in any way that wasn't factual. They described events that were factual, and on top of that, this is the most important part, they never saw these events as a negative thing. They saw it as Richard being quirky and funny, which are both positive traits that Gumball and Darwin clearly appreciate Richard for. It would be one thing if they said these things and then they went on to say that Richard was a bad dad. It's clear that at least Darwin throughout the whole episode is appreciative of Richard's efforts and intentions and would never be ungrateful towards his value to the family. However, the way that Nicole and Naive set this up is so that if Gumball and Darwin would have fabricated traits about their father and portrayed him to be someone who is more admirable than he realistically is, that would have been a good thing to Nicole to lie. This is a few episodes past The Authority, an episode that has Richard start the episode making bad decision after bad decision after bad decision, which led to him getting injured, hospitalized. These decisions, while funny and part of a great scene, are not examples of something that someone rational would do. They're dumb, that's why it's funny, it subverts the logical route that would fix the problem. You know what, I think what really grinds my gears the most here is that Nicole never speaks upon these positive aspects that Richard has within the episode. episode. I think the episode would have been saved if Anais and Nicole had a bigger role than being the aggressors here. I want to know what Anais truly thinks about her father, the same father that she's been shown in these first 2 seasons, because this is season 2, to have roughly have the same viewpoint as Gumball and Darwin.
I'd happily apologize to Dad. If what we said wasn't the truth!
Right, that's it. You clearly don't appreciate your parents, so until you apologize to your father, we won't be doing anything else for you.
Here's another point where I can see many of you thinking that Nicole is extremely unlikable in this episode. To revoke basic privileges from your children for being rebellious in the way they view their parents is extreme, but also hypocritical to the same woman who would have some equally rebellious viewpoints about their own parents. Not only that, but again, because of the fact that from this point on, Nicole serves no greater role and is actually pretty absent from this episode, it leads you to think about how poor the writing is, to build a foundation of Gumball being unappreciative of his parents, yet one of them doesn't explain the importance of gratitude, and would much rather sit out longer than the other side to brute force their appreciation to a character that again has done the lesser amount in the grand scheme of the two when it comes to parenting, factually. But again, let's focus on what Nicole said. You don't appreciate your parents. That's again factually incorrect. That's just wrong. Suppose the scene in the beginning was talking about Masami's mom, Banana Joe's mom, Hector's mom, 3 characters that would actually go on to have a significant role within the series. Gumball and Darwin would then explain the aspects of Nicole that they appreciate. She works long hours just to keep the house afloat, she serves as a strong protector of the family, and she can also be very helpful towards Gumball and Darwin's problems. And everything I just said here can be backed up by fact, or at least a former episode that fans and viewers can infer from. So do Gumball and Darwin survive on their own with no help from their parents? No, absolutely not. Why would they? They're children. And speaking of, what's one thing that is almost universally known about children? They lack experience and can say things that aren't exactly the right way to say things. Gumball is known for saying things that he shouldn't say, so of course, he's not going to understand the nuance as to how to explain why he loves Richard regardless of his clear inability to do many things. Regardless of the backwards plot, I do appreciate the early Gumball charm here. Gumball explains with full confidence that things are going to go one way and then they go the other way, generally in a way that's very well executed, or even unexpected, even if you were expecting something to go awry. It's scenes such as the food scene, where even though they picked up everything for cheap, all of the food goes bad immediately, leading to funny scenes like this.
Poor little thing.
I love how Darwin didn't have the heart to look at what he was killing. The voice acting was top notch for this scene, when it came to him. It's such a shame that jokes like this are being wasted on a grand plot that is ultimately a lie. The episode then tries to pull off another slick move here, one that I find even more reprehensible than Nicole switching Gumball's ungratefulness of Richard to Gumball's ungratefulness of his parents. The episode then ramps up Gumball's outwardly rude attitude towards his father. It almost seems that someone mid-writing knew that Gumball had no reason to apologize for telling the truth and thus had to drag Gumball down to allow Richard to be seen in a morally better light. Pro tip, if you have to drag one character down in order for the episode to not be so one-sided, maybe you're on your way to skewing your episode and making it worse. So then we get to the song. Actually, let's not play the song. I don't want to deal with automatic claims. But in a nutshell, a great song. One that sounds calming yet well composed. I appreciate the uncommon beat signature, and I think the lyrics provide a great back and forth between the cementing of the theme of Richard thinking that Gumball and Darwin as his little ones, and showing examples of things that he contributed to. Here's the problem with this song, which contributes to the biggest reason why I don't like this episode. It knowingly makes the viewer the bad guy by withholding information. Never up to this point does anyone know that Richard taught Gumball how to walk or talk. Never up to this point. It seems like such a dirty move to throw this out because the viewer had no idea, and this episode clearly positioned Richard to be the dad who embarrasses people. Not only that, but no kid, including Gumball, would be able to get that off in a conversation about why they appreciate their parents. Oh, my dad got me this expensive tan. Yeah, my dad taught me how to walk and talk. That's not something that parents go out of their way to do. That's something that's required. That's something that every parent most likely would have done anyway. That's like saying that you're my friend because when I text you, you text back. Do you want to know Richard's true contribution so far, episode-wise? The dress. A season 1 episode I reviewed, he messes up all the clothes, and Gumball has to go to school in a dress. The spoon. Richard sends Gumball and Darwin to the gas station by themselves, and just so happens to get caught up in a criminal robbing the store. The laziest. After clearly losing a challenge against Gumball and Darwin, Richard, in revenge, gets Nicole to yell at Gumball and Darwin, feigning working all day while the kids act like lunatics for an easy guilt trip. The refund. Richard fails to convince a store owner to refund Gumball and Darwin for a video game. And after getting beat up, Darwin and Gumball, that's a really weird, why did I write it that way? Anyway, Darwin and Gumball have to save Richard, so then Richard in return can save them. And again, the authority, where Richard literally put himself in the hospital for not being able to fix a television set. These are the episodes that built Richard's character, so to sit there and try to make Gumball and Darwin look like the bad guys because Richard taught Gumball how to walk is downright insulting. Am I saying that Richard is a bad person? No, of course not. He's contributed to some of the best jokes in the show. You have the episode The Date, where Richard helps out Gumball to get nice clothes to impress Penny. You have the episode The Club, where Richard helps Gumball get to the computer that is uploading a fake but embarrassing video of him. You have the episode The Wand, where Gumball and Darwin try to help Richard believe in magic again. He does good things as well, and he's seen in a positive light almost always for his effort and intent. However, to expect a child to explain intent in a playground conversation is like expecting you guys to explain why I'm a panda. Do you even know? Does anyone really know? It's not for you to explain, in the same way that it's not for Gumball and Darwin to understand that. So Darwin sets Gumball and himself up to be trapped, so that Richard can save him and feel validated. Never mind the fact that if you have to set up a situation for Richard to actually prove himself in, then that means that he normally doesn't do much to help around, and he doesn't. Let me put it to you this way. They could have easily found something for Nicole to do in the house to prove that she's contributing. However, we are in what I like to call the other half. Maybe it's not an equal half and half, but just for brevity's sake, let's just call this the other half. This episode really lays it on thick that Gumball is not appreciative of his dad, and his character change is truly annoying. It's annoying because I'm sure a counter argument to my review is that the episode was not trying to portray that Gumball and Darwin didn't find any worth in Richard, but that they disrespected him, and that's what Nicole and Anais are mad about. However, here's my problem with that. They didn't. They describe these moments in a way that they can share a laugh about. It's Richard who took it a certain way. Him. Again, even when these moments are factually accurate. I know I brought up a lot of episodes, but let's talk about 2 episodes that happened before and after this episode. The Fridge and the Castle. So, The Fridge and the Castle are 2 episodes that show us that Nicole clearly is what holds the family together, with her ruthless way to set things right. Regardless of what you think about these episodes, they are also proof that Richard clearly delivers a lesser amount of effort when it comes to the parents' contributions. However, remember the fence I brought? Well, here's where I'll use it.
Boys, where are you? Up here! How am I supposed to get up there? Oh, I don't know. How about you get us down using that ladder right there?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Wow, really thought that one through, didn't you?
Oh.
You are so insensitive! Would it really hurt you to encourage him once in a while? You can encourage a clam to read all you want, but that's not going to get it into college.
Well, here's the thing. It's far from me to tell people that they should love a parent regardless of their skill, just because they're trying, even if they are as careless as Richard is here. Darwin is right in the sense that Gumball shouldn't be actively discouraging his father, who is giving his all to try to save him. He isn't intellectually gifted, and neither is Gumball, so it's not like Gumball would understand what to do in this situation either. However, Gumball is right in the sense that Darwin naturally wouldn't call Richard to fix this situation. He'd call Nicole because they both know Nicole is competent and would fix the situation quickly, like in the DVD, where he repeated this sentiment multiple times. It's clear that Richard's strength isn't in saving them in life-threatening situations. It's in being kind, fun, and of their mindset, as Richard can be somewhat of a child himself. So while this episode would want you to sweep your parents' issues under the rug to spare their feelings, I shouldn't be telling you that. I don't know if that's 100% right or wrong. It seems to me that that's a great issue that this episode makes a great case for, considering how botched the execution of this episode is. However, speaking of positives, I love the atmosphere here. I love how it feels matched towards the tone and tension of these collective scenes. I also love how Richard never snaps back at Gumball, even when he would have been warranted to do so.
No! He's gone. And I was laughing at him. Why didn't I tell him that in spite of everything I was proud, Darwin? I was proud of him. If he were still here, I would tell him. If he was still here. Oh, you're here.
This moment also here shows that Gumball deep down actually does appreciate Richard, even if he doesn't show it all that much. The only person who has a problem here is Richard, and to an extent Nicole, as again, it's been shown that Richard isn't much of a help in many scenarios. So then we ironically get to one of my favorite scenes in the entire series. And wouldn't that be a list, but don't ask me to do that list. That seems like a extremely hard list. I'm already thinking about it. My head aches. Getting my mind off that, because I really do. After the magnetic crane drops the amount of metal it was supporting, Gumball is stuck in a car that the Crusher is about to absolutely mangle, with only a ladder that is going to give in as his only way out. This is when Gumball is shown to be vulnerable, with him relying on Richard as his support. It's then when we're shown a time in which Richard and no one else helped Gumball tremendously, giving him the support to pick himself up and run away from death. Now, do you see the difference here? This is something that is brought up now. It's not something that the episode makes painfully clear that no one should know until it's brought up, like Richard teaching Gumball how to walk. I love everything about this scene, from the atmosphere to the music to the way that the scene changes to show the parallels to Gumball learning how to walk and being courageous enough to walk towards his father. Only now, Gumball tells Richard that he'll always be his hero, and they share an emotional moment, with the rain stopping to emphasize the clarity in the way that Gumball and Darwin perceive Richard. This makes the episode even more disappointing to have such a great scene follow such a lackluster episode. It ends with Richard being shown to be incompetent, with Nicole being completely oblivious to acknowledging this in this episode, almost as if it were a coincidence. Now, would I consider this to be the worst episode? No, not even in the top 3, most likely not even in the top 5 or 10. Here's why. The episode goes out of its way to make me think. It's an interesting episode for being so backwards in its thinking. Unlike episodes such as The Web, The Sweaters, and The Worst, where the episode thinks for you and thus steamrolls any meaningful interaction to hammer the point home that the episode clearly isn't confident that the characters would lean in to the point that they naturally would do, this episode has different angles that a person can come away with, all of which make it far more interesting to me. And I tend to think about interesting things. I don't think about paint drying, I don't think about grass growing. I think about things that I'm interested in. It's why I couldn't tell you half of the formulas I learned in calculus, or anything that I learned in microeconomics. It wasn't interesting. But this is interesting. I'll take an interestingly bad episode over a boring episode any day. However, if you deem the hero to be god-awful, I won't argue with you. And I guess that's why I think it's funny. On paper, I should not like this episode, to the point where I have that same fire and energy and rage that I would have towards later episodes of Fairly Odd Parents, or even The Worst. However, I don't. It's a bad episode, but it didn't irritate me the way that other Gumball episodes would. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below, and special thanks to the supporters of January, and until next time, take care. Alpha out. Oh my god, this fence was so uncomfortable to sit on.